Okay, so we'll make a new patch, and let's start with a jit.world. Okay, that gives you our window, right? We can give this world a name if we want. Our world, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, to turn on the jit.world, you need a toggle. So we got that. There we go. It turns gray. Hold on. Okay, there we go. My notes were being weird. Got them now. Okay, great. Now we need jit. We're going to start with videos, and we're going to look at video mixing first. So let's start with some jit.gl.video planes. jit.gl.video plane. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit so my objects are bigger. There we go. Okay, so obviously and you can see as soon as you put a jit.video plane, it puts it here in the jit.world. You can see it's black because there's nothing on it right now. It doesn't have a texture, so it ends up being black, but you can see it in front of the gray background. Okay, we're gonna warp this video so that it fills the screen. There's an easy way to do that, and it's called @transform_reset2. Transform reset 2. Now you can see the black fills up the entire screen, right? So we're going to make a video mixer, so let's get a couple videos. Why don't you go over here and grab, let's grab dust and chickens. So grab chickens and drag it on there, and then grab dust, which is this one down here, and drag it somewhere else. So we have two different video players. Okay? Now, there's an easy way to crossfade this, but it's not the most efficient way. It's kind of the old way of doing things. And that is by using the jit.xfade object. You can then patch one video or picture in this side, another video or picture in this side, pass the output out to the video plane. If I go ahead and hit play on the video, by default, it's giving me the left-hand input. But now I can send a message xfade $1. Send that into the object with we can either use a float number and go from 0 to 1. Didn't that work? Why am I? Oh, probably because my video stopped playing. Turn your video onto loop and play them both so that they're both playing. There we go. And now you can say xfade, and if I go between 0 and 1, it'll go from one to the other, right? Let's let's take our world here and say @floating 1 so that it puts the video on top. And then you'll have to turn it back off and on again. There we go. All right, so, but a better way to do this would be to use a slider, right? So let's just make a slider. Whoops. You can either type out slider or just hit the S key. And I like my video sliders to be horizontal. And then go in for the, open the inspector with a Command I. Oh, here, I'll turn on my, what is it, mouse pose for the keystrokes for you guys. There we go. All right, so this slider, though, we need a value that goes between 0 and 1, right? This slider goes between 0 and 127 in integers. We need it to be a float that goes from 0 to 1. So we change that in inspector, go over here, click on float output, and change the range to 1. All right, so this is a slider float output range 1. All right, you don't have to type that. I'm just putting that on there so that you guys know what the settings need to be on this slider. Now I can just patch that into either this message, or actually I can patch it into the integer, the float box here. Now I got a nice slider, and as you see down here in the corner, I can just easily go from one to another, right? And that works fine. And if your computer's fast enough and you're not doing many layers of video, that'll probably work fine without dropping frames or being too hiccupy. But if you start doing a lot of different matrix-based calculations, or you have 10 different video frames and you're trying to crossfade them all this method, which uses the CPU and not the GPU, you're going to run out of CPU. You're going to run out of CPU space overhead, and your computer will slow down. So let's look at a slightly better way of doing it. Actually, a much better way of doing it. And that is, so we're going to look at 3 different methods of mixing. So the second way of doing it, and let's create a way of, let's just create a way of enabling and disabling the other methods that we're not looking at. Come on, stop doing that. If I unplug my cable, it's going to stop my recording. There we go. I guess I need to replace this cable maybe. Okay. All right, so to do that, we're going to disable the video frame, the video planes that we're not using. So we just need a message that says enable $1, and then a toggle. For now, that's all we need. I can just now toggle this and then toggle it off, and now you see that that video plane has been disabled and we don't see any videos in it, right? All right, so now we're going to look at the second way. So again, we're going to need 2 videos. Let's grab 2 different videos. Grab something like the countdown video here, and dishes. I'm picking videos that I know don't have any sound in them, just so that we aren't driving each other crazy. Okay, now we just, instead of mixing these with an object and then sending it to one video plane, we instead do 2 different video planes and make those video planes either transparent or opaque. So we just need a JITGL video plane. This time we need to make sure, we also want this to be at transform reset 2. We need to make sure to have this be at blend enable 1, or else it won't work. Okay, and let's go ahead and specify layering as well. So if you want to do layering, by default it does it based on the Z position of the video plane. Our Z positions are all going to be at 0. So we should specify otherwise, and to do that we have to say at depth enable 0, because that disables the depth-based sorting, or layering, I mean. And then at layer, and specify a layer. Let's make this layer 1. Actually, let's make this layer 2. We'll make the other one layer 1 when we do it, if we need to. Make this layer 2. Okay. Now we can. Now that we got this one set up the way we want, we can just duplicate it and make this layer 3 over here. Okay. I like to resize these. At least I like to try to resize these to make all the @ symbols line up. It makes it really easy to read. Sometimes it is not possible to do it though. Okay, and so now we can just pass this one into this video plane, this one into this video plane. You can hit play. Make sure you start the loop on these, or else they'll just stop in a second. And now whichever one is on the higher layer is the one we see, right? So this is on layer 3. I could go back and change this one to layer 4 if I wanted to. And now it would be on top, right? So the higher layer is always on top. Let's change it back to layer 2. And now what we're going to do is change the color of the video plane. So we're going to need a color message. And we just need to change the alpha color, which is the last variable. The other colors we want to be 1. 1 period, 1 period, 1 period, and then $1. So that will change the alpha of that. Alpha channel is either at the beginning of the color or at the end of the color, depending on the object, and that's really annoying, I know. But if you start adjusting it and it's taking out the red channel, then you know that it's the other way around and it's the one at the end. If you start adjusting it on the other side and it's messing up the blue channel, then you know that it's the alphas at the beginning. It's kind of, whether it's RGBA or ARGB is not that consistent in Macs, unfortunately. It's one of my complaints. All right, so we can use the same slider that goes from 0 to 1 here, just duplicate it, right? So this has the same float output with a range of 1. Trying to move this stuff over. There we go. And we can send that into this color message. Oh, this is the one that's on the bottom. Send it to the other object for now. And that will either make it, why am I not seeing what's underneath it? Did I not say blend enable? I did. So I'm not sure why I'm not seeing. Oh, I know, because I set the color down to something else and then I rechange it. So I just need to respawn this object. There it is. There we go. So I'm making the layer that's in front transparent or not transparent. That's another way of mixing. It's not a true crossfade because the layer in back is always opaque. Right? If we wanted this to be a real crossfade, the way we would do it is, and you know, not to say that one way is the better than the other. If you like the way this looks, that's great. The other way to do it would be to have, as one is going up, the other is going down. So to do that, you just need a little math object here that takes 1 minus the value. And to do that, the easiest way is with the exclamation point minus, which is the minus but the inlet's reversed. So it's, instead of this minus 1, it's 1 minus this, right? So pass that through and pass that to this color message and pass that to the other video plane. And now it should basically still look the same, but with these with this, the difference is this back layer now is also partially transparent. So if we had a third layer like this one here in the background, you can see it now because all the 2 layers in front of it are partially transparent. So this chicken is, you can see the chicken in the background, and when I have that enabled, so I could disable it, it turns it off, right? So that's the difference between just making one layer transparent or making both layers transparent. Essentially, as long as one is going up as the other is going down, it'll crossfade the way you would expect. So that's the second method. Let's make another. Let's copy this enable stuff here and drag it over and drag it over. Move my window out of the way. And patch this into both of these video planes so that we can disable both of these. Okay, turn it on and off. Now we have nothing enabled. So we're going to look at the third method. So the third method is to use a shader to do the mixing, just like we used the jit.xfade object here. Actually, to save time, let's just duplicate all of this from the jit.xfade stuff, drag it all the way over here for where we're going to put method 3. And let's change the video plane. We want this to be also at blend enable 1 at depth width enable 0 at layer. Let's make this 4. Okay, and instead of jit.xfade now, we're going to change this to a JITGL.slab. Okay, now the slab, which we're going to look at further in a minute. The slab is a method, is an object that you use to hold shader files and get the output of the shader file as a texture, and then pass that texture either to another slab or a video plane or an object or whatever you want to send your texture to. Okay, so in the JITGL slab, we want to load the Crossfade shader, which is called file, which is what you use to load a specific shader. And then I think it's called co.xfade.jxs. And if you want to see what shaders are in Max, the easiest way, the ones that are built in, the easiest way is to make a U menu. This is a U menu. Okay, and on your U menu, you want to open up the inspector, go to auto populate, and check that. Auto populate. Okay, and then you want to, under collection name, you want to click on the arrows and then choose shaders. Shaders, there it is, about 2/3 down on the second column. And then it'll create this menu for you with all of the shaders that are built into Max. And we're looking at co.xfade.jxs, that one right there. Okay? So that, I believe now you would, to get shaders to work, you got to work with their parameters. So the first thing you need to do, because the slab doesn't know what the parameters are for the shader, that's all based on the way the shader is programmed. And you can make your own custom shaders, right? And so there could be parameters in this shader that nobody had ever thought of when they made the slab object, right? So you have to send it a message, get param list, or what is it? Get param list to the JITGL slab after you've loaded the shader. And then when you send that message, it will send out the dump outlet, a list of the parameters. So in this case, the parameter we want is called xfade. That's convenient since we already have this coded to say xfade. But if I just sent xfade to slab, it wouldn't know what I was talking about. It wants the word param before that. So let's just take this and say prepend param. So that'll add the word param before the xfade and pass that into the slab. Now go ahead and set these two videos running. Okay, by default you get the one on the left, and if I adjust this, you get the one on the right. Okay, I'm starting to get frame rate issues. Mine's probably worse than yours because of my screen recording. But let me stop my other players from playing. Maybe that'll help. Yes, that helped a lot. Okay. So there we go. So that's the third way of crossfading. And this way of crossfading, along with the color method, are the ways that are going to run the fastest. So this one with a shader might run slightly, probably imperceptibly faster than doing the two video planes with color messages, because this you only have one object that you're rendering in the 3D realm, and then you're just transforming the texture that you're sending to it. Any questions on this before we move on?
On the second one,
yeah,
that you just introduced, when I use my float for some weird reason, I'm getting like the chickens from the first video and the dishes, but not the countdown. I don't know.
Okay, so what do you have on your layering? You have at layer 2 and that layer 3 on those two
Yes,
video
I do.
planes? And do you have at blend enable 1?
Mhm.
Okay. Then it's probably a problem in your color message. Let's take a look what you got there. So you have, first thing I can see here, you have this double going to it twice. So you have, yeah, you want to get rid of that extra one. Not that one, the other one. Nope. That one. Right? You only want it to go to it, the message once, not twice. And then you're sending that same color message to 2 different video planes. You should send one to one video plane, one to the other video plane. There you go. And it should work.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yep. Yes. Okay, did you make sure that this slider had a range of 0 to 1 with a float? It's flickering. Let me take a look and see what you guys are talking about. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so let's see, what's going on over there? You got codec export, that's right. Good jump for in, that's right. Wait, it's not doing it now. Oh yeah, as soon as you do it. Weird. Try respawning the slab object. Maybe that will fix it. No? That's weird. That shouldn't be that. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. Is there, open your Max window. Do you have any error messages? Can't find, oh, so something's wrong with the shader file that we've loaded. Probably have a space in it. Try it again. Yeah, respawn it. No, see that didn't show up that time. That's strange. Is it, how many other people have a flickering?
I mean, my slab doesn't really, it's either on or off.
You probably have your slider parameters wrong.
Isn't it just 0 to 1?
Make sure it's on float.
Okay.
You probably have it on integer. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Try, you could save and reload Max. Maybe that would fix it. I'm not sure. Do you have another patch open maybe also? Yeah. You have a question? So you go in, you open up the inspector for it, and you say auto-populate, and then right underneath auto-populate is collections, and you change the collection to shaders. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm not exactly sure why Bucks is jittering. That I can't find the error in her programming. It looks like it's right, but it's doing it. I'll have to check in with you on that. But at least you have the other method that works. All right. So let's make a little quick system for enabling and disabling and stopping the videos when they're not playing. So we're going to just make a menu that flips between these 3 methods. So just let's make an integer and open up the inspector for the integer box. There we go. And set the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 3. Okay? And send that, whoops. Send that out a, I don't know, method, we'll call it. Doesn't matter.
Sorry, what was the max and minimum?
0 to 3.
0 to 3.
Actually, we don't even need to send. Let's just patch these with cables. It'll be fine. They're all right here. I can't fit them all on my screen because I'm zoomed in, and my window won't get out of the way. Because I told it to by saying floating 1. All right. So all we need to do now is have three logic operators. Equals equals 1 equals equals 2 and equals equals 3. And that will, when this is a 1, this will send a 1. If it's not a 1, it'll send a 0. When this is a 2, it'll send a 2. I mean, it'll send a 1. Right? And so now we can send this to the enables and also to these video players, because when they get a 0, they stop, and when they get a 1, they go. So this will automatically trigger the videos for us and disable the video planes when we're not on that method. Okay, and then 3 is over here. Here, I'll move this one over a little more and make it a little clearer for you guys. Okay, cool. So now I can turn them all off by setting this to 0, and they all turn off. They all stop playing, and they all get disabled. And come on, don't do that. Give me my window. There it is. And I can then set this to 1, and I get the first method here, right? And I can set it to 2, and I get the second method, and I can set it to 3, and I get the third method that doesn't work for Buck. All right. Okay. So let's look at Slab now. Look at some more at Slab. We use Slab here just to hold one shader file. Actually, before we look at Slab, we should probably look at a more basic shader object called JITGL Shader. So let's. I'm zoomed out. Okay. There we go. Let's add a down here. We can make a. We're going to make a JITGL Shader, which is kind of like Slab, but it is just for loading a single shader, and it's a way of creating a shader, sending parameters to that shader, giving that shader a name, and then you can use those parameters. You can use the named instance of that shader in other objects, and it will be affected by the shader and all the parameters that you're feeding into this object. Does that make sense? It'll make sense more when we do it. So we have a JITGL shader. We're going to need let's just grab the U menu that we auto-populated with the shader collection. Let's drag it down here because we're going to need these shaders. This is a U menu with an auto-populate and the collection name of shader. Okay? You're wondering what that was. All right, so we can use a read, I believe. Yeah, read, sorry, message. We want a message that says read $1, because that will read that shader into the JITGL shader object. We want to use the middle outlet of the U menu, because the first outlet of the U menu just gives you the number of the item that you chose. We want the name, which comes out the middle outlet. Send that into the JITGL shader. We're going to need to give the JITGL shader an actual name so that other objects can reference it. We're going to call it at name shade me. Okay. Now, let's see. What was I going to do with this? Now I remember what we're going to do. let's make a, go ahead up here, set this to 0 so that all your videos stop and disables all your video planes. Because we're going to make a 3D object. Make a JITGL grid shape at shape torus. Okay, it makes a torus. It's zoomed out. I mean, it's really huge right now, and so we're only seeing the donut hole in the middle. So let's make this at scale 0.25. Now we get a smaller. It just looks like a circle because why? Why is this flat and doesn't have any definition to it? Lighting enable. Now, here's a secret that I just learned. At lighting enable is actually a shader. It's just a shader that's built into Max that you don't have to talk about. But when it does this at lighting enable 1, it's loading a light shader that shades the object based on the lighting. That's like what shaders do originally. At smooth shading 1, that's another shader that applies a very primitive shading method that interpolates between values to give a smoothing effect to an otherwise low polygon object. And yeah, and that's another shader basically. But we can load another shader into this object on top of this. So we can say at shader shade me. So now it has whatever shade me is loaded into shade me. Right now nothing is loaded into shade me, so nothing changed. But go ahead and change this from JIT alpha glue down to what's it called? vd.gravity.jxs. Yeah, why somebody re-aimed the projector lower than it used to be. Here, I'll try to give myself some more margin space. Is that better? Okay. So vd.gravity.jxs, load that in there. What happened? My shader disappeared. My grid shape disappeared. I think it's because it just got affected by the shader. If I take out the shader thing, it's there. Okay, so it was the shader. Made it get distorted to the point of not being able to see it. Now, what did I have to do to be able to see that? I remember. Okay, so that means that some parameter is distorting this beyond the ability to see it. So we need to see what parameters are part of this shader. So get param list is the same thing as in slab. And we can have a message on the dump outlet here. Get param list. And there's param list. Obviously, that's just the name. That's for routing. Then grav posts, which I'm guessing is the position of the gravity, which pulls the vertices toward it. And then the amount and fall off. So it's probably the amount is either too low or too high to make this work. So let's make a message param amount $1 and attach a float into that and send that into the JITGL shader. There we go. And as soon as I make that something positive, we see the object. Now, I tried. Obviously, we've said lighting enable 1 and smooth shading 1 on this. There's no real way that I know right now to get the vertex displacement and lighting effects at the same time. There's probably a way to do it, but I'm not sure what it is. But I think we would be able to see this better if we set this up to be rendered as a wireframe instead of as a flat shaded polygon. So we can say, actually, let's just put it in these attributes. Say at poly mode 1 There we go. So now it renders it as a wireframe, so we can see it well. and we can better see how it's going to be warped by this. So we have this amount, and this is getting warped by the gravity, which is currently sitting in the center of the screen. So it's just getting warped about a gravity point in the middle. So as you turn the amount up, it's like pulling it into the singularity of a black hole or something, right? So we want to change the gravity position. So we can also have a message now that says param grav pos, right? We know what it's called because we got it down here when we said get param list. And then I'm going to guess that the gravity position is probably 3 variables for X, Y, and Z location, right? Because usually positions are either 2 or 3 variables. So $1, $2, $3. Okay, and now we just need to send it a list with the 3 values. So let's just do a POC object, PAK, float, float, float. So now we have our list of 3 floats, and then we just need to attach 3 float boxes to this. Okay, patch that into the param. Patch the param grav post into the JITGL Shader object. So now we're passing that message along. And now if I move this over on like the X, you see how it's warping it toward that. And if I move it up on the Y, it's warping it toward that. We're going to create a cool system to make our mouse warp this thing around. To do this, we're going to need to take the mouse coordinates from the screen, right? If you click on this screen and move your mouse, it actually sends out mouse coordinates from the JIT world, right? If you attach to the dump outlet here and I click, it says mouse and then the value, and then it gives me a number that's based on the size of the screen. So it goes from, in this case, 0 to, 822. But if I resized the screen, it would go from 0 to the new size of the screen, 423 or something. So that's kind of annoying as far as if I want a value that goes from -1 to +1, I need to know what the size of the screen is. But we can actually just specify the size of the screen here in our JIT world so that we know and it's consistent. Let's just make it a small screen at size 640 by 480. Okay, that's kind of a normal size screen window for us. You'll have to turn it off and back on again. All right, so now these coordinates that come out will be between 640 and 480. We need to route the word mouse, right? Because it said the mouse and then the value. And then let's just send this out a mouse send. Let's make a send that says mouse, and then we'll receive that down here. So I'm going to change that to an R. We're going to receive that over here. Here, let's move our grav post stuff down so we have some room. And now,
which output of the JIT world goes into the route mouse?
the dump out. Yeah. So now coming out of the mouse, we just need to unpack this. It's going to be integers, integer, integer, integer. We only need the first 2. We're only going to move the X and Y because, well, there is no Z actually. There shouldn't be a third. Oh, there's extra values in this route mouse. They're having to do with whether you're touching any modifier keys like the command or the shift, or whether you're clicking the mouse or not. We don't need those. We just need its location. So we're just going to unpack the first 2 numbers. And you can patch those into the first 2 numbers here. The only problem is those are, that's really far away from the thing, right? Because this should be a number that goes between 0 and 1, not a number that goes from number that goes from -1 to +1, not a number that goes from 0 to 640. So we need to scale this value, right? This is something we do all the time in Max to make one value range work with another value range. So scale 0 to 640, and we're going to scale that between -1 and +1, and patch that into this number here. So I'm going to disconnect that, patch that into this scale. Okay, I'm going to move this stuff over, get myself some more room. Same thing here, except for instead of 0 to 640, it's going to be 0 to 480. And because Y values are upside down, it's going to be 1 to -1 instead of -1 to 1. Patch that into this one here, delete this connection, and make sure you pass it through the scale. Now, as you move your mouse around, the gravity follows your mouse. And you can make it warp along with your mouse. Although to me, it looked better when I scaled it instead of from from -1 to +1, to rather scale it from -1 to -2 to +2. Seemed to work better for me. So change these to 2s, 2 to -2 on the Y, and now it's pretty close to where your mouse is, right? And the amount also affects this, right? So if I have the amount down to something really small, you might not see much effect at all. But if I have the amount up to something higher, you'll see the effect becomes more pronounced, right? So this is a vertex displacement shader. Wow, the projector is out of focus too. Man, that must be driving me crazy. All right.
I honestly thought it was just my prescription. I was like, it's
I know
fine.
you need glasses, so it's just
Yeah,
like,
we're both just like, I guess it's me. That's a problem. We shouldn't think that way.
Here we go.
no.
I can hit it with this and get it to. Is this one open up or not? Yes, there we go. Is this gonna work? Or am I just gonna look like an idiot? That's worse.
Oh,
Wait.
I went too far.
yeah.
There we go.
Yes. Nice. It's like,
Okay. Cool. So that's one shader, and this JITGL shader, the whole param stuff, it works the exact same way in Slab. The difference between shader and Slab is that shader just sets up a shader that you then call in other things. In this case, we're calling it in a JITGL grid shape. We could call the shader in a video plane as well. It would do the same kind of thing. It would warp the video plane instead of the thing. Although I did try that and it overrides the video, so it's not that useful for trying to make like a pinch effect. There's other shaders that will make a pinch effect in your video, and I would use that instead. Something like I think there's one called is there a pinch in the, let's see. I think you could do it with ripples. You could do it with twirl and some other ones. Anyway, let's look at some of those. So let's look at JITGL Slab now. Okay, so for Slab, let's go ahead and let's work with the camera. We haven't worked with the camera much. JIT.grab will work with any camera capture card that you have installed on your computer, or will work with your built-in iSight camera if you have one. So you need a message that says open to turn on that camera, and you should see your light turn on your camera if you have a Mac. I'm not sure how it works on Windows. We can have a JIT.p window here. JIT.p window. And you can patch that in there and you should be able to see your camera stream. For me, I'm like backlit because I want my identity kept secret. That's why. Okay. So now we can pass this through a slab. Now the thing about Slab is you can use this on one channel or two channels. Let's have a video. Actually, let's have an image be our second channel. Let's go over here, grab images, and find the chili. Oh, geez, where's my chili? I have too many pictures. Too many pictures. So many cards. Chili. There it is. All right, so grab the chilies. You might need I think you're gonna need a button to get the texture in there. And if I pass that into the slab, and we could just actually, let's just attach it to this JIT window on the output. Bang that in there. So by default on the JITGL slab, if you send 2 video textures in there and you haven't loaded any shaders, it just gives you a 50-50 opacity mix. So you see the shaders and you see the camera. I mean, so you see the chilies and you see the camera in front of it. We want to load some different shaders in here. Let's grab our menu thing here along with the read message that we already used before. Yours isn't working?
Oh, sorry.
Did you hit send the open message to your grab?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Maybe it's my computer camera or something. I don't know.
Is your light on?
Yeah.
Should be sending. Do you have a JIT.P window?
Yeah. Isn't that the JIT?
Yeah. When you pass it straight into the P window, do you see your camera? Take it off. Just delete the slab, or actually just delete that connection. Okay. And put it around straight into it. Yeah. It might be that you're not bright enough to see anything.
Oh. Okay.
You see anything now?
I feel like that's really bright.
Yeah, no, your camera's not outputting for some reason. Try re-instantiating the grab object, deleting it.
Yeah.
Undoing. Now send the open again.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's something wrong with your video stream.
Okay. No.
Okay. Cool. So we need to load a shader into this. We're gonna do some compositing shaders. So there's some of these compositing shaders. Well, you don't have to do anything. They just do what they do, like burn. Right? It's like the burn of compositing thing in Photoshop. Right? We can, if we want, we can say get param list into the JITGL slab and have a message on the dump outlet to get the param list. And you see here that we have amount. So maybe changing the amount would change this. So let's see. Here, we already have this over here. Get a param amount here. So I could patch that into the JITGL slab, and now it would change the amount of burning. And maybe a negative value does something different, right? So some of these have very few, if any, parameters, but they just do what they do. Another one would be, what? Difference. It simply takes the numerical difference between the pixels of one and the other and affects the two. So because I have a really dark image, there's no difference between this and this, so the second texture shows up. But where I have a light enough image, they actually have the difference between the two pixels. So the difference between the pixels in both streams. So you end up with that kind of weird color thing. Cool. So those are compositing shaders, and there's lots of them. What else was I going to show you? Oh, let me show you some. There's also generative shaders that create their own textures, like bricks. All that does is create a texture. You don't have to have any video going into it. If you just loaded the slab with the bricks, it would give you a brick thing. And you can get the params for the bricks. And there's stuff like brick color, mortar color, the brick size, the brick pattern. And you can adjust those to make the bricks different, right? If you wanted that. Or polka dots. GN bricks. Oh, polka dots is actually it's a material, isn't it? Yeah. Actually, I could show you that really quick. Back up in this one here, the gravity thing. If we read in here, there you can also read in material shaders that change how the texture is applied to the object. Find the one that says MAT. Should be in here. It says MAT something. Material. I can't find any of my materials. Oh, here they are. Third column for me anyway. Matte polka dots. And then if I'd have to go out of poly mode to be able to see this, right? So poly mode 1.1, change that back to poly mode 0.0. And now you see it puts polka dots on it. It makes it extremely specular. I think we'd have to add an extra light in there, or change the GL light parameters to make this look a little better. I don't want to waste time with that. Any questions so far? We're almost done with the lesson for today, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time doing lab time. So, any other questions? So we looked at some that just work without having to set any parameters. We look at some that just create generators that generate their own textures. The other kind of ones of kind of video effects are usually these texture displacement, TD. So let's look at like TD cart to pole, which will take the and if I say get param list on this, looks like it's origin, scale, and text 0. So if I change scale is probably the one that's going to change how pronounced the effect is. So if I just change this to scale and change this value. What? Oh, this is cart to pole. I was thinking this was twirl. Change it to twirl. TD dot twirl. There we go. And get param list. It's actually amp in this case for this shader. So I change this to the word amp. There we go. And now I can change the amount of twirl that I put into this thing. The other one that I chose that, what was it? It was TD cart to pole. That maps it into a circular, but you can't really change how it does it or how circular it is. This one you can. Okay, so that's a one-channel texture displacement shader. There are other two-channel texture displacement shaders that are usually used for transition effects, right? And those are over here. I think they're called TR for transition. So like dissolve is one of them. So if I say get param list, I believe in this case it's going to be the fade. Fade. So if I change this to your word here to fade, and I want to change this to 0, right? I get a particle fade, right? A dissolve fade. I can change this now to TR grid wipe or TR vignette. That one I like because it's like the Looney Tunes. So you can, make it go from a circle outward.
The chilies are like creating a weird mask on your face. If you like do it, like how you were sitting right there, and like, the contours of the chili like perfectly matched your head.
There are some pretty cool. I was playing around with some of the compositing shaders earlier today, and you can make the specular regions of these chilies kind of change the displacement of the texture, and it kind of looks like you're looking at the camera video through warped glass that's shaped like these chilies. It's kind of interesting. So playing around with these shaders, if you want an interesting video effect, there's all kinds of different ways to manipulate your video. All right? That's all I wanted to show today. I want to take the rest of the time to start working on your finals, unless there's any questions on this. Can you mix shaders? So yes. Oh, right. I was going to do that. So here we've applied. Let me go. Let's put this in a video plane. JITGL video plane at layer 10, so it's on top. Why do I still see that other thing? Grid shape. Now, whatever. I'll leave it on up there for now. So we can patch this into here, right? I can make this at transform reset 2. All right. So now we can just pass it through another slab before it gets to the video plane. So patch what's going to this video plane through another slab. And this slab could load a different file. So let's duplicate this again. Patch this into the other slab. And this time, this one, let's load fisheye. And get the param list on this. Actually, you know what I want to do instead of fisheye? I want to do, what is it, wobble. Yeah, sure, wobble. Okay, and get param list, and it looks like probably one I could work on with is amp, is probably the amount. So I could just duplicate this stuff down here. Change the word fade here to amp. Right, so I can have this video effect on the earlier layer, and that still does what it does. But we also now have this wobble on top of it that does what it does. Right, so you can have chained effects. So, and then of course the order of things matters, right? If this now, if I were to change this one to wobble and the other one to vignette, first of all, I'd have to pass this into down here. Change this to vignette. Or what was it? TR vignette. And this one to wobble. TD wobble. Now we have it first being wobbled and second being faded. So I'd have to change this message to fade. Come on. Come back. Don't quit on me now. There we go. What's going on? Oh, this was amount. Thank you. AMT. And this one probably, oh, this fade is probably on the wrong thing. Yeah. So now I have a wobbled channel 1 or a non-wobbled channel 2. Right? Because the channel 2 doesn't pass through that shader. Okay? Any other questions? Is there, yeah.
I can get the image or the picture to show up. It seems like
Do you have your jit.world turned on? I can take a look. Click the button there on that shows. What are you trying to see now? What are you not seeing when you're trying to see? Okay, so you say I don't see any place where you're sending a message to that. It should be a fade message. Remember, you won't be able to do it until you send it a fade message with a float. param fade $1. Yeah.
What is the trick? So I was trying to use a completely different file, but I haven't been able. It hasn't worked the same doing the main using manually. How do I get the UI file for the list of shaders?
You have to go to, you make sure that you have auto populate clicked on the inspector for the U menu. And then right underneath auto populate, there's a thing called collections. Change that one to shaders. It's a big long list. I think it's in the third column of the list. About 2/3 of the way down.
In that case, I'm having an issue where it just keeps on, whenever I choose a new shader, it just pops up my find. It pops up my finder.
Then you probably patch the your read message is probably wrong.
Okay.
You probably don't have a read $1 or you have a bad character or an extra space, so it's just sending it a read message which will pop up that dialog. So do you have a read $1?
I thought I did. I would do it.
Oh, no. The reason why you have it patched to the first outlet of your U menu, which gives you a number. So it's saying read 1, read 2, and it doesn't know what that is. Middle outlet,
Got it.
not the third outlet. There you go.
Oh.
Okay. All right, cool. So I want you guys to start working on your finals. I'm gonna go around to you one by one and talk to you about what you're doing and what you might need help